The ship called Eternal Dawn moved slowly through the darkness of space. It was not a warship. It carried no weapons that could threaten anyone. It was a ship of peace, built by the people of Earth to carry their first message to the stars. Inside the ship, Ambassador Park stood near a window and watched the station grow larger. Nexus Prime, the center of galactic civilization, a place where 12 ancient species had gathered for 10,000 years to rule the galaxy together. And now, for the first time, humans were invited to speak. Was 43 years old. She had spent her whole life preparing for this moment. She spoke 9 human languages and had learned 3 alien tongues in the past 5 years. She understood politics and diplomacy better than anyone on Earth. But standing here now, watching that massive station fill the window, she felt like a small child walking into a room full of giants. Captain Lee stepped up beside her. He was a quiet man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had commanded ships for 30 years, but he had never seen anything like Nexus Prime. "It is beautiful," he said softly. Nodded. The station was shaped like a flower with 12 petals, each one belonging to a different species. Lights of every color moved across its surface. Ships from 100 worlds floated around it like fish around a reef. "Beautiful and terrifying," replied. Behind them was checking her equipment one last time. She was the youngest member of the diplomatic team, only 28 years old. She was a scientist who specialized in alien cultures. Her job was to help understand the beings they were about to meet. "The council members are already assembled," reported. "All 12 species. They are waiting for us in the central chamber." Turned to look at his crew. 20 people had made this journey with them. 20 humans who represented all of Earth. Engineers, doctors, artists, soldiers. Each one had been chosen carefully. "Remember why we are here," said to them. "We come in peace. We come with respect. Whatever happens in that chamber, we represent our entire species. Make Earth proud." The crew nodded. Some were nervous. Some were excited. All of them understood the weight of this moment. The Eternal Dawn docked at Nexus Prime with a gentle bump. The airlock opened, and cold air rushed in. It smelled strange, like metal and flowers and something could not name. A tall creature was waiting for them. It looked like a praying mantis made of silver metal, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed soft blue. This was a keeper, one of the station's servants. It did not speak, but it gestured for them to follow. They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls showed images of stars and planets and beings that had never seen before. Other aliens passed them, and most did not even look at the humans. Some made sounds that might have been laughter. A few pointed and whispered to each other. Kept her face calm. She had expected this. Humans were new, humans were unknown. Of course the other species would be curious, or amused. The central chamber was larger than any building on Earth. The ceiling rose so high that clouds actually formed near the top. 12 platforms floated in a circle, each one holding the delegate of an ancient species. There were beings made of living crystal. They sparkled with inner light and made sounds like breaking glass when they spoke. There were massive creatures with 4 legs and 2 arms, covered in thick brown fur. Their faces held no expression that humans could read. They were tall and thin, with skin like silk and eyes like black pools. They moved with perfect grace, as if dancing even when standing still. And there were 9 others, each more strange and wonderful than the last. Beings of gas and beings of stone, creatures with 100 eyes and creatures with none. Together, they ruled a galaxy of trillions. And in the center of the chamber, on a small platform barely big enough for 3 people, stood, and the leader of the council spoke first. His name was, and he was the oldest of the. His body was made of deep blue crystal, and when he talked, his voice filled the entire chamber. "You are the humans," said. It was not a question. Stepped forward and bowed. She had practiced this bow 1,000 times. "We are. I am Ambassador Park of Earth. I bring greetings from all the people of my world." Silence, then made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Greetings. Yes, we received your message. You wish to join the council. You wish to be treated as equals." "We wish for friendship," said carefully. "For trade, for the exchange of knowledge and culture. We have much to offer." "Do you?" leaned forward. His crystal body caught the light and threw rainbows across the floor. "Tell me, human, how old is your species?" Hesitated. "We have existed for approximately 300,000 years." Another sound of laughter, this time from several platforms. 300,000 years, repeated. "My species has existed for 900 million years. The youngest member of this council has existed for 40 million years. You are not even infants to us. You are nothing, a flash, a spark that will burn out before we notice it." The delegate made a crude gesture with one of his massive arms. The representative turned away entirely, as if was not worth looking at. Felt heat rise to her face, but she controlled it. "Age does not determine worth," she said. "We may be young, but we have achieved much. We have art and music and philosophy. We have learned to travel between stars. We have—" "You have nothing," interrupted. "No ancient technologies, no psionic abilities, no hive mind, no connection to the greater forces of the universe. You are alone in your skulls, trapped in your weak bodies, limited by your short lives. What could you possibly offer the council?" Opened her mouth to respond, but another delegate spoke first. It was a being made of swirling gas, and its voice sounded like wind through dead trees. "They are amusing," the gas being said. "Like pets, perhaps we should keep a few for entertainment." More laughter. His hands tightened into fists at his sides. His face had gone pale, but stood straight and refused to show weakness. "We came here in good faith," she said. "We came offering peace and partnership. If you do not want these things, we will leave, but we did not come to be mocked." Rose from his platform. He floated down until he was directly in front of, so close that she could see her reflection in his crystal face. "Then leave," he said softly. "Return to your little world at the edge of nowhere. Perhaps in 10,000 years, when you have grown, you will be worthy of our attention. Until then, you are nothing, and nothing is what you will receive from us." He turned away. "This audience is over. Remove them." The keepers came forward. They did not touch the humans, but they made it clear that there was only one direction to go: back, away, out. As they walked through those endless corridors again, heard laughter following them. She heard whispers in languages she did not understand but whose meaning was clear. Mockery, contempt, dismissal. Walked beside her in silence. His face was like stone. Only when they reached the eternal dawn, only when the airlock closed behind them, did anyone speak. "What do we do now?" asked. Her voice was shaking. Looked out the window at Nexus Prime, at the flower-shaped station where 12 ancient species had just told humanity that it was worthless. "Now," she said quietly, "we go home, and we tell Earth what happened here today." The eternal dawn turned away from the station and began its long journey back to Earth. Behind them, the laughter of the galaxy continued. But it would not continue forever. The footage spread across Earth like fire through dry grass. Every screen on every continent showed the same thing. Ambassador Park standing before the Galactic Council, his crystal face glowing with contempt, the laughter of 12 ancient species echoing through that massive chamber. "You are nothing," his voice repeated on every channel, "and nothing is what you will receive from us." People watched in their homes and in their workplaces. They watched on trains and in hospitals. They watched in schools where children sat in confused silence, not understanding why the adults around them looked so angry. By the time the eternal dawn returned to Earth, the planet was burning with rage. Protests erupted in every major city. In New York, 1 million people marched through the streets carrying signs that said, "We are not nothing." In Tokyo, Crowds gathered outside government buildings demanding action. In Lagos, in Mumbai, the story was the same. Humanity had reached out its hand in friendship, and the galaxy had slapped it away. Military leaders from every nation met in secret. They talked about weapons. They talked about building fleets. They talked about showing the Council that humanity was not weak, that humanity could fight. But in Seoul, in a quiet room at the top of the United Earth Assembly Building, President had a different idea. He was 61 years old, a former professor of history before he entered politics. He had spent his whole life studying how civilizations rose and fell, and he knew something that the angry crowds did not understand. Revenge was easy, wisdom was hard. He called a meeting of his closest advisors. Admiral was there, a military man who had commanded Earth's defense forces for 15 years. Minister was there, the head of foreign relations. And Park was there, still wearing the same clothes she had worn on Nexus Prime, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "The people want war," Admiral said. His voice was heavy, "or at least the threat of war. They want us to build ships and show the Council that we are strong." "And what would that accomplish?" President asked. "It would make us feel better." "For how long? A year? 10 years?" shook his head. "The youngest species on that council has existed for 40 million years. They have technologies we cannot imagine. If we threaten them, if we attack them, they will destroy us. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. They will wipe us out like we wipe out insects." Minister leaned forward. "Then what do you suggest? That we do nothing, that we accept their contempt?" No, stood up and walked to the window. Below him, the city of Seoul stretched to the horizon. Millions of people living their lives, unaware that their future was being decided in this room. "I suggest we do something they will never expect, something that will make them remember us forever." He turned to face his advisors. "I suggest we choose silence." The room went quiet. "Silence," Admiral repeated. "Complete silence. We close our borders. We stop all communication with the galaxy. We do not trade with them, we do not talk to them, we do not respond to any of their messages. We simply disappear." Was the first to understand. Her tired eyes suddenly grew sharp. "You want to make them wonder about us?" "More than that," returned to his seat. "I want to make them need us. Right now they see us as children begging for attention. But what happens when the children walk away? What happens when we are no longer there to mock? They will start to think about us. They will start to wonder what we are doing. And eventually they will start to realize what they have lost." "What have they lost?" Minister asked. "We have nothing they want." "We have things they do not know they want. Human art, human music, human philosophy, human medicine. Human trade routes through our space." Smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "We are small and young and weak, but we are also in a very useful location in the galaxy. Ships pass through our space every day. If we close that space, if we force them to go around, it will cost them." Admiral was nodding slowly. "And in the meantime, we grow stronger." "Yes, in secret, behind our closed borders we build, we research, we prepare. Not for war, but for the day when they come back to us, because they will come back. The question is only when." 1 week later, President addressed the entire planet. He stood on a simple stage in the center of Seoul with no decorations and no music. Behind him was a single image, the Earth, floating in space, alone and beautiful. "My fellow humans," he began, "you have all seen the footage. You have all heard the words of and the Galactic Council. They called us nothing. They laughed at us. They told us to come back in 10,000 years." He paused and let the anger wash over the crowd. "Many of you want revenge. Many of you want to show them that they were wrong, that humanity is strong, that we can fight. I understand that feeling. I share it." Another pause. "But I am asking you to consider a different path, a harder path, the path of silence." He explained his plan. He spoke for almost an hour, his voice calm and steady. He talked about dignity and patience. He talked about the power of walking away. He talked about building a future instead of fighting a war. They expected us to rage, he said near the end. They expected us to beg. We will do neither. We will close our borders. We will go quiet. We will become a mystery to them. And in our silence, we will become something they never expected. He looked directly into the cameras. We will become something they cannot ignore. The vote was held 3 days later. Every adult human on Earth had a voice. The question was simple: accept the silence protocol or reject it. The result was not close. 94% voted yes. Within 1 month, every human ship in the galaxy had returned home. Every communication beacon went dark. The borders of Earth's space were marked with automated platforms that carried a simple message in every known language. We are not accepting visitors. Please do not approach. Admiral oversaw the final withdrawal personally. He stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched as the last human vessel crossed into home space. Send the final message, he ordered. His communications officer opened a channel that reached across the galaxy. Every species with a receiver would hear it, every station and ship and world. This is Admiral of the United Earth Fleet, he said. His voice was calm and cold. As of this moment, humanity is withdrawing from galactic affairs. We will not communicate. We will not trade. We will not respond to any hails from Council species or their allies. We have nothing to say to those who see us as nothing. He paused. When you are ready to treat us as equals, you know where to find us. Until then, consider us silent. He cut the transmission. And then, for the first time in 50 years, no human voice traveled between the stars. In the council chamber on Nexus Prime, heard the message. He made a sound that might have been laughter. The infants are throwing a tantrum, he said. They will come back within a year, begging for our attention. The other delegates agreed. Humans were emotional, primitive, short-lived. They did not have the patience for true silence. They would return soon, humble and desperate. But a year passed, and the humans did not return. 5 years passed. 10. And still from Earth's space, there was only silence. Deep and absolute and growing more unsettling with every passing day. The council had expected rage. They had expected begging. They had not expected this. They had not expected patience. And slowly, so slowly that they did not notice it at first, the council began to realize that something was wrong. Something was missing. Something they had thrown away without understanding its value. But by then, it was too late to take it back. 50 years passed in silence. On Nexus Prime, life continued as it always had. The 12 ancient species governed the galaxy. Ships moved between stars. Trade flowed through established routes. Wars were fought and won. New worlds were discovered and claimed. But somewhere in the back of every conversation, in the quiet moments between important decisions, there was always a question that no one wanted to ask out loud. What were the humans doing? At first, the jokes had been easy. The quiet ones, the other species called them. Delegates would pretend to check their communication devices and say, "Still no message from Earth. I suppose they are still crying." The laughter came quick and sharp. But as the years passed, the laughter became less frequent, and then it stopped entirely. Because the silence was not normal. The silence was not what anyone expected. Young species always came back. That was the rule of the galaxy. You could insult them and dismiss them and mock them, and they would be angry for a while, but eventually they would return. They needed things. They needed trade and technology and protection. No young species could survive alone. But the humans were not coming back. The first real problem appeared 20 years after the silence began. A scientist named worked in the great archives of the. She was young by standards, only 300,000 years old, and she spent her days studying the art and culture of other species. It was considered unimportant work. decoration, entertainment. But one day made a discovery that changed everything. She was examining a piece of human art that had been collected before the silence. It was a simple painting, nothing special, showing a sunset over water. They had taken it as a curiosity, a sample of primitive creativity. But when looked at it with her scientific instruments, she found something hidden in the colors, mathematical patterns, equations that described the movement of energy through space, ideas that they had been trying to understand for millions of years. The humans had painted their physics into their sunsets. Ran to her superiors with the discovery. They examined other human artifacts, music, sculpture, poetry, and in each one they found the same thing, knowledge hidden in beauty, science woven into art. The implications were staggering. Human creativity was not primitive at all. It was a different kind of intelligence, one that the ancient species had never developed, and now it was locked away behind a wall of silence. They tried to send a message to Earth, a polite request for more art, for more cultural exchange. They would pay well, they said. They would offer technology in return. The automated platforms at the edge of human space received the message. They did not respond. They simply continued their endless patrol, turning away any ship that came too close. The second problem came from a plague was spreading through their colonies. It attacked the nervous system, causing paralysis and eventually death. Their doctors had searched for a cure for decades without success. Then someone remembered. The humans had offered medical knowledge during their first visit. They had brought samples of their plants and animals, hopping to trade. One of those plants, a small flower from a place called Korea, contained a compound that might fight the plague. But the samples were gone, destroyed long ago as worthless, and the only place to get more was Earth. They sent a fleet to human space, not to attack but to beg. They broadcast messages of desperation. They explained about the plague, about the dying children, about the millions who would die without help. The automated platforms received these messages too, and like all the others, they did not respond. The fleet waited at the border for 3 months before finally turning back empty-handed. Millions have died in the years that followed, and in the great halls of their government, the species that had once laughed at humanity now spoke the name Earth with fear and regret. The third problem was the biggest of all. They were the masters of trade. Their merchant ships traveled everywhere, carrying goods between species, making deals that built empires. And the fastest routes between the rich inner worlds and the resource-filled outer regions all passed through one place: human space. Before the silence, this had not mattered. Human ships were friendly. They allowed passage without trouble. Some had even begun to trade, exchanging small goods for information about the galaxy. But now the routes were closed. Any ship that tried to pass through human space was stopped by the automated platforms. Not attacked, not damaged, just stopped. The platforms would move in front of the ship, blocking its path. If the ship tried to go around, the platforms would follow. There was no way through. They had to find new routes, longer routes, routes that added years to journeys that once took months. Their great trading empire, built over millions of years, began to crumble. 50 years after the silence began, the Galactic Council gathered to discuss the human problem. Was still alive, though his crystal body had grown darker with age. He sat on his platform and listened as delegate after delegate spoke about the disasters that had befallen their species. They had lost access to revolutionary ideas. They had lost millions to plague. They had lost their trade routes, and every other species had lost something too, small things that they had not noticed until they were gone. Counselor, the scientist who had discovered the hidden mathematics in human art, spoke last. "We were wrong," she said simply. "We looked at their short lives and saw weakness. We looked at their young civilization and saw ignorance, but we did not look closely enough. We did not see what they truly were. "And what are they?" asked. His voice was tired now, lacking the confidence it had carried 50 years ago. "They are different, not lesser, not greater. Different. They think in ways we cannot imagine. They create in ways we never learned. And now that difference is locked away from us because we were too proud to see its value." The chamber was silent. "What do you suggest?" another delegate asked. "I suggest we humble ourselves. I suggest we go to the edge of human space and apologize, not as masters speaking to servants, but as equals speaking to equals. Perhaps, if we are sincere, they will listen." Made a sound of disgust. "Apologize to infants. We are the Galactic Council. We do not apologize." "Then we will continue to suffer," replied. "And when the next crisis comes, and it will come, we will face it without the one species that might have helped us." Her words hung in the air like smoke. Because everyone in that chamber knew she was right. Everyone had heard the reports from the outer rim. Something was moving in the darkness between galaxies. Something hungry. The Devourers were coming. And when they arrived, the Council would need every ally it could find, even the ones it had thrown away. But outside the Council chamber, in the cold reaches of space, the automated platforms continued their patrol. They did not care about politics or plague or trade routes. They had one simple instruction, and they would follow it forever. Keep the borders closed, keep the silence complete, let no one pass. Until humanity was ready to speak again. 100 years after the silence began, the galaxy was burning. The Devourers had come from somewhere beyond the known stars. No one knew where they had originated. No one knew how many they numbered. All anyone knew was that they consumed everything in their path. They were not like any species the Council had faced before. They did not negotiate. They did not trade. They did not communicate in any way that could be understood. They simply arrived at a world, descended upon it in swarms that blocked out the sun, and ate. They ate the plants and the animals and the people. They ate the buildings and the ships and the ground itself. And when they were finished, they moved on to the next world, leaving nothing behind but bare rock and silence. 12 Council worlds had fallen already. Billions of lives erased in months. The great fleets that had protected the galaxy for millions of years were being torn apart by enemies that did not fear death. On Nexus Prime, the Council met in emergency session, but there was no confidence in the chamber anymore. There was only fear. "Our defenses are failing," Admiral of the reported. His silk-smooth face was pale with exhaustion. "We cannot hold them back. For every swarm we destroy, 3 more appear. At this rate, they will reach the inner worlds within 2 years." "Then we must evacuate," another delegate said. "Save who we can, find somewhere to hide." "There is nowhere to hide," replied. "They will find us eventually. They always find new prey." The chamber fell into despair. Then Counselor spoke. Her voice was quiet, but in the silence everyone heard her. "There is one ally we have not asked." Turned his ancient crystal body toward her. He had grown so old now that his light was almost gone. "You cannot mean the humans." "I do mean the humans. They have been silent for 100 years. In that time we do not know what they have built. We do not know what they have become. But we know that they are still there behind their wall of platforms. And we know that they once offered us friendship." "They will not help us," said. "We humiliated them. We laughed at them. Why would they save the species that treated them like dirt?" Looked at him with something like pity. "Because they are not us. Because they might be better than us. And because we have no other choice." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then rose from his platform. His body creaked with age, and his light flickered like a dying candle. But his voice, when it came, still carried the weight of 10,000 years of leadership. "I will go," he said. "I am the one who sent them away. If anyone should beg for their return, it should be me." His ship was small and old like himself. He refused an escort. He refused guards. He traveled alone across the galaxy, past the burning worlds and the scattered fleets, until he reached the edge of human space. The automated platforms were waiting for him. They moved to block his path, just as they had blocked every other visitor for 100 years. Their surfaces were smooth and unmarked, showing no signs of age or wear. They had waited patiently for this moment, and they would wait patiently forever if necessary. Opened a communication channel. "People of Earth," he said, "I am of the 100 years ago, I stood before your ambassador and told her that humanity was nothing. I told her to come back in 10,000 years. I laughed at her and at all of you." He paused. The platforms did not move. "I was wrong. I was proud and foolish and blind. I looked at your short lives and thought you were weak. I looked at your young civilization and thought you were ignorant. But you have taught me something that I never learned in 900 million years of existence." His voice cracked. For the first time in his long, long life, felt something like shame. "You taught me that dignity is not about power. It is not about age or technology or ancient wisdom. It is about how you respond when the universe treats you badly. And you responded with more dignity than I have ever seen." He looked out at the silent platforms. "Now the galaxy is dying. The devourers are consuming everything. World after world is falling, and we cannot stop them alone. We need help. We need allies. We need—" He hesitated. "We need you." Still no response. "I have no right to ask this. I have no right to expect anything from you, but I am asking anyway. Not as a ruler, not as a conqueror, but as an old man who finally understands how wrong he was. Please, help us." 3 days passed. Waited alone in his ship. He did not eat. He did not sleep. He simply watched the platforms and waited. On the third day, one of the platforms moved aside. A single ship emerged from human space. It was small, barely larger than its own vessel. Its design was unlike anything in the galaxy. Smooth curves and sharp angles, metal and light woven together in ways that should not have been possible. The ship stopped in front of and opened a communication channel. A human face appeared on his screen. A woman, old by human standards, with white hair and eyes that held more wisdom than her short years should have allowed. "I am Han," she said, "great-granddaughter of Captain Lee, who stood beside Ambassador Park on that day you remember so well." Bowed his head. I remember every moment." "Do you remember the laughter?" "Yes." "Do you remember calling us nothing?" "Yes." Studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she smiled. But it was not a smile of triumph or revenge. It was something gentler, something did not recognize. "For 100 years, she said, "we have waited, not for revenge. We have no interest in revenge. We waited because we knew this day would come. The day when you would need us. You knew. We hoped. President believed that silence would teach you what words could not. He believed that absence would show you our value better than presence ever could. He was right." His ancient body trembled. "Then you will help us." Did not answer immediately. Instead, she asked, "Do you know what we have been doing for the last 100 years?" "No, we could not see past your platforms." "We have been growing, learning, building, not for war but for this moment. The moment when we could return to the galaxy not as beggars but as equals." She leaned forward. "Yes, we will help you. We will fight the devourers beside you. We will save your worlds if we can, but there will be conditions." "Name them." "First, no species will ever be mocked for its age again. The Council will welcome young civilizations as partners, not as pets." "Agreed." "Second, human space will remain sovereign. We will open our borders when we choose, not when you demand." "Agreed." "Third, and most importantly," she paused, "you will learn from us, not our technology, not our weapons. You will learn our philosophy. You will learn why we chose silence instead of war. You will learn what we believe about dignity and patience and the power of walking away. Looked at this human woman, this being from a species that had existed for only a heartbeat compared to his own. And for the first time, he understood why humanity was different. They were not weaker than the ancient species. They were stronger in ways that the ancient species had forgotten how to be. Agreed, he whispered. To all of it, anything you ask. Nodded. Then follow me. It is time for humanity to rejoin the galaxy. She turned her ship around and flew back toward human space. And the ancient ruler who had once called humanity nothing followed behind her like a student following a teacher. Behind them, more platforms moved aside, and from the darkness of human space, lights began to appear. Ships, thousands of them, tens of thousands, a fleet larger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The silence was over. Humanity had returned. The Battle of Nexus Prime lasted 11 hours. Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Soul's Promise, and watched the Devourers swarm toward the station. There were millions of them. Billions, maybe. They moved like locusts made of shadow, their bodies blocking the light of distant stars. Behind him, the greatest fleet ever assembled waited for his command. Ships from Earth and ships from the Council. Crystal vessels and war machines and trader ships armed with borrowed weapons. All of them together, for the first time in history. But the heart of the fleet was human. 100 years of silence had not been wasted. While the galaxy laughed and then worried and then despaired, humanity had been building. Not just ships, but new ideas, new technologies, new ways of thinking about war and peace and everything in between. All ships, this is Admiral, he said into the fleet-wide channel. His voice was calm. He had waited his whole life for this moment. The Council laughed at humanity once. They called us nothing. Today we prove them wrong. Today we save them. Not for glory, not for revenge, but because saving people is what humanity does. He paused. All ships attack. The fleet moved forward like a wave. The Devourers had never faced resistance like this. For millions of years they had swept through galaxies, consuming everything. Species fled before them. Civilizations crumbled. No one fought back effectively. But humans did not think like other species. The Council ships used weapons that had not changed in millions of years. Plasma cannons and particle beams, powerful but predictable. The Devourers had learned to adapt to them long ago. Human weapons were different. They used sound. They used light. They used frequencies that disrupted the Devourers' hive mind, turning their coordination into chaos. Swarms that had moved as one suddenly split apart, individual creatures crashing into each other, losing the connection that made them deadly. And then the human pilots moved in. They flew their ships in ways that made the Council observers gasp. Sharp turns that should have been impossible. Attacks that came from angles no one had considered. Patterns that seemed random but were actually calculated to exploit every weakness the Devourers had. 100 years of silence. 100 years of watching. 100 years of learning everything about the galaxy while the galaxy learned nothing about them. This was the result. Hour after hour the battle raged. The Devourers threw everything they had at Nexus Prime, and hour after hour the human fleet held them back. Ships were destroyed on both sides. Lives were lost. But slowly, impossibly, the tide began to turn. In the 9th hour, Admiral made a decision that changed everything. Open a channel to the Devourer swarm, he ordered. His communications officer stared at him. Sir, they do not communicate. They have never had reason to. Give them one. The channel opened, spoke into the void. Devourers, I am Admiral of the human species. You have consumed worlds and destroyed civilizations. But today you face something new. Today you face a choice. The swarm hesitated. For the first time in anyone's memory, the Devourers stopped attacking. You can continue to fight, continued. And we will destroy you. Not all of you, perhaps, but enough. We will chase you across the galaxy. We will hunt you until there are none of you left. This is not a threat. It is a simple fact." He leaned forward. "Or you can choose differently. You can accept peace. We will help you find worlds to live on, worlds without intelligent life. You can feed without killing. You can exist without destroying. The choice is yours." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the swarm began to withdraw. No one knew how or why. Perhaps the devourers had a kind of intelligence that no one had bothered to look for. Perhaps they simply understood, for the first time, that they had met a species that would not run. The battle of Nexus Prime was over, and humanity had won. In the months that followed, the galaxy was transformed. The Galactic Council still existed, but it was no longer the same. A 13th seat had been added to the circle, a seat for humanity, and the human who sat in it was not a warrior or a politician. It was Han. She had refused all military honors. She had refused all titles of power. She asked only to help build something new, something better, something that would last. Working with delegates from all 13 species, she helped write a new charter for the Council. Doctor, a young scholar from Earth, did most of the actual writing. But the ideas came from 100 years of human philosophy, 100 years of thinking about what the galaxy could become. The new charter was simple. No species would be mocked for its age. No species would be excluded for its differences. Every civilization, young or old, weak or powerful, would be treated with respect. "We are not building an empire," explained to the assembled delegates. "We are building a family. Families argue, families disagree, but families do not abandon each other. Families do not laugh at each other's struggles." Listened from his platform. He was dying now. The lived long, but even they did not live forever. His crystal body had grown dark and his light was almost gone. After the ceremony, he asked to speak with Alone. They met in a small room overlooking the station. Outside, ships from 100 worlds moved peacefully through space. The war was over. The rebuilding had begun. "I have a question," said. His voice was barely a whisper. "One that has haunted me since you returned." "Ask." "Why?" The word hung in the air. "After everything we did to you, after the mockery and the contempt and the 100 years of silence, why did you save us? Why did you not simply watch us burn?" Looked at him for a long time. Then she walked to the window and stared out at the stars. "Because cruelty is easy," she said. "Any species can learn to mock. Any species can learn to exclude. Any species can learn to dominate those weaker than itself. It takes no wisdom. It takes no strength. It is the simplest thing in the universe." She turned to face him. "We wanted to show you something harder, something better. We wanted to show you what it looks like when a species chooses kindness even when it has every reason to choose revenge. We wanted to show you that strength is not about power. It is about who you become when you have power." His crystal form flickered. Among this was the equivalent of tears. "In 900 million years," he whispered, "no species has ever taught us anything. We believed we knew everything worth knowing. We believed the young had nothing to offer the old." He looked at with something like wonder. "We were wrong, and you proved it not with weapons or threats but with patience, with silence, with the courage to walk away and trust that we would learn." Smiled gently. "That is what humanity is. We are not the strongest. We are not the oldest. We are not but we believe that every being, every species, every corner of the universe deserves a chance to be better. And we are willing to wait for that chance, no matter how long it takes." Died 2 days later. His last words were about Earth, about the small blue world that had changed everything. 200 years after the silence began, the Galactic Council erected a monument at the site of humanity's first visit. It stood in the central chamber where Park had once been laughed at, where had once called humanity nothing. The monument showed a single human figure, a woman standing straight and calm, looking toward the stars. Her face showed no anger, no pride, no triumph, only patience, only hope. The inscription at the base was written in every language known to the council. It said, "They came offering friendship. We offered mockery. They answered with silence. And in that silence they became the greatest of us all." Young species joining the council would often stop at the monument. They would ask their guides about the story, about the humans who had been laughed at and had chosen not to laugh back. "It reminds us," the guides would say, "that wisdom does not come from age. It comes from choosing who you want to be. It comes from becoming that person, no matter how the universe treats you." And somewhere far away, on a small blue world at the edge of the galaxy, children learned the same lesson. They learned that strength was not about weapons or technology or ancient power. Strength was about patience. Strength was about dignity. Strength was about choosing kindness when cruelty would have been easier. And that was why Earth, once mocked as nothing, had become the heart of the galaxy. Not through conquest, through example. And the laughter that had once filled the council chamber was never heard again.